My question is, I also read some papers about life or some complex molecules being forming those hot streams from the Earth. But normally in those thermal places, the temperature is quite high. So how those complex molecules can survive? We always...
In the hydrothermal vents, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's why not too many people favor the black smoker type, because the water gets up to 400 degrees centigrade. So whatever is formed there, it will be destroyed. But there are plenty of microorganisms today in black smokers, you know. Not at that temperature, but at very high temperatures.
High like what, 150?
Close to 100. There are microorganisms growing there that grow at an optimum temperature of 110. The pressure is so high that the water is liquid.
Any other questions? I have a question. Mm-hmm. I think that the theory about these hydrothermal vents, not the black smoke one, but the other ones, start becoming more attractive as it develops, and I think Nick Lane is a great proponent of it. And it's likely, or more likely, that in other parts of the universe you might have the conditions for that. What Nick Lane suggests is that complex life, on the other hand, yes, is most probably a most unlikely phenomenon and might not have happened twice in the universe. What do you think about that?
Yes, he has been supporting the contention that endosymbiosis took place once only, and that is why he believes that it is so unlikely that there will be complex life. I am not talking about intelligent life, just complex. Eukaryotic life elsewhere. Since there is no evidence at all, it is very difficult to have an opinion on that. But his arguments are pretty good in the sense that endosymbiosis is, in any case, is a frequent event. It is very unlikely that a small bacterium will colonize another small bacterium. What we know now more is that the archaea that received the proteobacterium as a host had already developed some structures that are present in extant eukaryotic cells. It wasn't a very simple archaea. It already had some membranes inside the cell. But we have to collect more evidence from remnants of those primitive organisms that you know, some eukaryotes have even lost their mitochondria. We have to collect more evidence, and the evidence is there. They keep finding new archaea with very interesting structural features and genomic features as well. At present, I don't have a definitive opinion.
Rafael?
Thank you, Rafael. Just a general comment. In the early atmosphere, there was practically no oxygen at all, and also no ozone.
No.
So UV light exposure was really dramatic. So, in my view, the multicellular and complex life development really started when oxygen levels started to rise, and part of that is the Cambrian explosion. So, at least in our development of life, oxygen was a really key trigger, some threshold to really boost all the various ways of complex lives. So I'm not sure how much of the early life, I mean, that is really challenging how to live in this high UV light exposure atmosphere with no protection.
Well, life was in the ocean by that time. And yes, photosynthesis started in the ocean. Still, a high percentage of photosynthesis takes place in the ocean. I don't know what percentage, at least 1/2, I would say, by cyanobacteria and microalgae. We are so deceived by the fact that there is so much more light than what we see with our eyes, you see. There is a nice paper published in PNAS some years ago called The Unseen Majority. There are so many microorganisms of different sorts in the ocean. There is so much richness in different types of genomes and structures and so on that, well, we all know for sure that life, no, we don't know for sure, but most people believe that life started in the ocean. There is another theory now that is receiving some support, is that life started in inland hydrothermal fields. Because in addition to this equilibrium, what you have in inland hydrothermal fields are cycles of a humid atmosphere and dry atmosphere. And that may help, for example, to combine to make CC bonds and peptide bonds or glycosidic bonds or whatever. It's difficult to conceive polymerization reactions that imply loss of water in the ocean, you see. But perhaps this environment inside the porous rock was a proper one. I don't know. You know, everything we say is speculation. I don't know if we will ever know, we will ever know how the process took place, because there is an historic component here that even if we reproduce in the lab, you know, the formation of life out of inner matter in these porous mounds in the lab, well, we are making that to take place. It's not spontaneous, because sometime many billion years ago there was spontaneous generation of life. So we may never know, because there is an historic component.
Maria Luisa.
Yes, there is a very recently released data from NASA measured on Mars, you know, the probe that landed, and said they found that the delta M15 values could only be produced by N2 fixations. And as far as we know, the bacterial nitrogenase is the only enzyme on Earth capable to discriminate between M14 and M15. So this is open the question that maybe the life came from Mars.
It could be. There is also a recent report in astrobiology by the authors, the scientists who designed the metabolic experiments of the Vikings in the 70s. And what they claim is that we should pay more attention to those results, because scientists were very excited when they first analyzed the results, and then they forgot. And it is an interesting publication, because the author, these two scientists say, why don't we go back to those experiments? Those are the only experiments that have been performed out of the Earth that we can say for sure that are uncontaminated. But all the other rovers that have been sent to Mars, they have not conducted metabolic experiments. They were aimed to find if there is mainly if there is liquid water in Mars. So I think it's time to send a rover to conduct metabolic experiments in Mars. Yeah.
The last question by Pandra.
No, I was just curious to know if this has any opposition to the Miller experiment where they put discharge and things.
Yes, it's a completely different hypothesis, and I was going to ask Luis, please not tell my friend Antonio Lascano that I don't favor the primordial hypothesis too, because Antonio Lascano, a good friend, an expert in the origin of life, is a strong supporter of the primordial soup theory. But for the reasons I gave you, I don't believe the primordial soup is important anymore. So people who support the primordial soup are completely against hydrothermal vents and the other way around. So when as I said in the beginning, when you don't know, there are controversies, and there is no way we can solve those controversies until we collect more evidence, and it is not easy to collect evidence in this field.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Luis.